This is the big issue that's going to affect pretty much all Uber drivers and Lyft drivers in 2026. And that is self-driving cars, but in ways you might not expect. Let's start there, because when I say that, I guarantee you a lot of people watching this video are going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. It's not that weird. For better or for worse, dystopian or utopian, for better or for worse, we know self-driving cars are becoming a bigger and bigger thing all the time. And in this video, I'm really going to explore what's going on with self-driving cars, the interesting things behind them that you might not know or might not even predict or expect, and then 3, how is it going to affect drivers in the future? This is going to be a bit of a raw fireside chat style video. I do these every once in a while, and I like doing these videos to make it very raw, casual, as if me and you are hanging out. And I used to drive for an Uber. And let's say you're like, hey, Mark, should I drive? But in addition, what do you think about 2026? Do you think with the way things are going with the ride-sharing landscape in the ride-sharing world, how will self-driving cars affect it? Or how won't they? So let's get into this. First off, I want to start at a very important point to understand. I've mentioned this in a couple of videos, but I really want to make a dedicated video about this. And that is this. Back in the day, we had rideshare drivers, let's say Uber and Lyft, and there's other companies like Empower and Rides, but typically Uber and Lyft versus taxi drivers. Ride sharing won. Then it got broken up into 2 different things, Uber versus Lyft. Like I said, there are other ride sharing companies, but to be honest, it turned into this thing of Uber versus Lyft. Coke versus Pepsi, same kind of battle, right? Uber and Lyft has 99% of the ride sharing market in the world, especially here in America. But then we're approaching this new phase, especially I'd say as we're finishing off in 2025 and about to be in 2026, which is crazy. I feel like this year kind of flew by. What you're seeing a lot, especially in different areas all around the country, I'm going to say the biggest cities in the country, is now Uber and Lyft versus Waymo. Rideshare drivers, human drivers versus self-driving cars or AI, if I'd word like that. Humans versus AI, the classic battle. But now, in 2026, which is going to be a very interesting thing to look at, you now have something like Waymo versus Zoox. Zoox just appeared in Vegas. It's a new company that does self-driving cars. Right now, those rides are free, and they're in designated pickup and drop-off locations. It's kind of in the beta stage, only in Vegas. So it's still in the infancy. But think of how fast Waymo moved. In the future, I don't even say next year, maybe this is more of a 2027, 2028 type thing, near the end of the 2020s, so maybe even near 2020, 2030, but things are moving fast. We're going to have self-driving car company versus self-driving car company. But to talk about the main situation here, for our human drivers, this is the big thing. Waymo right now is spreading rapidly. Right now it's in LA, Phoenix, San Francisco, as like kind of the main hubs where you download the app and then order it. But now it's being introduced into a lot of other areas. If you order an Uber in Austin or Atlanta, you actually might get a Waymo instead. And there have been reports of people like ordering 50 times in a row. They keep canceling human rides till they get a Waymo because they want to ride in a Waymo to experience the Waymo. In addition, it's now going to be introduced in places like Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C., Denver, Miami. The list is going on and on. Basically, Waymo is either A, in a major city, or B, about to be in a major city. It's exploring all these and hitting all these major cities all around the country. I mean, I think all we really have left, when I think of major cities that have not really been targeted, if I'd word it like that yet, is Chicago and Boston. Those are the only 2 areas. But in 2025, I wouldn't be surprised if Waymo goes and hits those. And here's where things become a huge issue for human drivers. And I know some of this video probably is not surprising to you. If I said, hey, self-driving cars are taking over a lot of human jobs, or AI or robots are taking over human jobs, that's not anything that's, hate to say, in this day and age, that crazy to mention. We all know what's going on with, like, say, ChatGPT and how it's affecting a lot of other industries as well. This is kind of the landscape and the world we're living in right now. Here's where things get really, really difficult, though. I think for a lot of drivers, there's a couple of different things. One, Waymo is getting better and better about how to penetrate a new market. As you can imagine, once they figure out their formula, their secret sauce, so to speak, and the more they go into newer and newer cities, they get better about how to get into a newer city. They get better at how to do testing. As you can imagine, there's a lot of like legal things and a lot of red tape they have to go through. They're getting better at how to do that. Another thing is right now they use the Jaguar I-Pace. The way I worded it in a lot of videos is basically like a remixed vehicle. So they have the Jaguar I-Pace, and then They remix it, if I'd word it like that, and build it into being a Waymo. That's what they're doing right now. However, I believe it's the 6th generation Waymo, in terms of the technology and the vehicle especially, is actually a vehicle now built just by Waymo. They don't need Jaguar anymore. They don't have to go outside their bubble, so to speak. They don't have to go to a third party. They have their own vehicle. I actually did a video about it because I've seen them a lot here in Los Angeles. There's been a lot of testing, and I've seen some in Playa Vista. I've seen some in Culver City. I've seen some in El Segundo, and a lot more. So now Waymo is actually keeping even more things in-house, which means Waymo spreading is going to happen more and more and more. The second thing I had to mention about Waymo, which is getting crazily, it's getting way more, just blowing up way crazier, and this is what's going to affect a lot of human drivers, is the novelty. I wish that the novelty wears off, but for a lot of people, they're really excited to try it. Like some of my friends I know who are going to San Francisco for a big music festival, and they're like, hey, I can't wait to try Waymo out. I cannot wait to try Waymo out. Just to be like, whoa, you're in the self-driving car. And I will say it is trippy. I did a video, I think the first time I took an actual Waymo was in June of 2024. It's about a year and a half ago. And it was trippy, seeing the steering wheel move on its own. You're sitting in a car. People, I'm not joking, running up to me with their phones, being like, oh, like, it felt like I was in like a real life Black Mirror episode. Now, when I see a Waymo, no one in LA freaks out anymore. It's too common to us now, for better or for worse. It's becoming way more normalized. And so the second thing I want to say is the normalization of Waymo, because at first I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't trust it. It's self-driving. I think a lot of people now, what initially looked at as a novelty is now common. The more common it becomes, the more you take it. Third thing is the safety. Waymo has demonstrated, again, love it or hate it, this is the truth, it is safer to take a Waymo now than an Uber and Lyft. There's a lot of statistics to show less accidents, less injuries when those accidents do happen, less traffic violations. Although there was a Waymo that got pulled over, I think for like running a stoplight, and the cop was like, who do I ticket here? That is something that's going to be interesting, and we'll see how that kind of develops, I think, next year, as there is going to be laws now putting into place of if a Waymo gets pulled over, who gets the ticket. I think it will be the Waymo company, but we'll have to see what happens. But the third thing is, they are safer. And the fourth thing, and this is the big kicker on this video. I've mentioned this in a few videos, and I have to mention it again, because this is the one that worries me for all my drivers out there. The price/valuation. Now, here's the thing. Obi did a study, and they found that Waymos, on average, are more expensive than Ubers and Lyfts. That being said, in the past year and a half, I've noticed Waymos getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. They've gotten significantly cheaper. And a lot of people do this thing where they go to take a ride share, and they say, okay, pull up Uber, pull up Lyft, whichever one's cheaper, we'll just take that one. The reason why is the difference between Uber and Lyft is pretty much nothing. It's the same experience. So why not just order Uber? Why not just order Lyft, whichever one's cheaper? But now, a lot of people are doing Uber, Lyft, and Waymo. That's something I do, I'll be honest. And I'd say now, in about, halfway through October 2025, about 50% of the time, Waymo's cheaper. I'd say maybe 40 if I had to really but if I had to look at like Uber and Lyft versus Waymo, or human drivers versus rideshare driver, human rideshare drivers versus self-driving cars, about half the time, maybe a little less than half of it, to be honest, like 40% or 45, Waymo's cheaper. So already that's becoming an issue. And for a lot of people, technically, the bottom line is the biggest thing. Is it cheaper? I'm taking it. But not necessarily now. Because they have found that even though on average Waymos are more expensive than Ubers and Lyfts, at least right now, most people, once they kind of pop that Waymo bubble, once they get that breadcrumb rolling, once that door's opened, they will still prefer a Waymo. People are willing to spend more money even if a Waymo is more expensive. And I think the main reason why is when it comes to an Uber versus Lyft, same thing. When it comes to an Uber and Lyft or a human driver versus a Waymo, very different experience. You have the whole thing to yourself. You have privacy. You can kind of play what music you want without being judged, if I were like that. If you want to bump your favorite artist and not get judged, go for it. If, let's say, you want to make a call, you can do that. There's a lot of advantages to being in a Waymo, and don't get me wrong. Waymo's not perfect, but I think the big thing for a lot of people is they're preferring a Waymo to a human driver. That is a big issue. And again, I'm not hating on anyone who does. Like, I do love taking Waymos too, but I think when I look at how are things going to affect Uber and Lyft drivers in 2026, that is a big catalyst. Not even just self-driving cars, because let's be honest, who knows if it was a fad? Who knows if the self-driving car world is going to be a bubble? But in this case, I don't think it is at all. Even Companies like Tesla are looking into how do we utilize the Tesla fleet that we already have and kind of create some ride sharing thing behind it. We'll have to see what happens with that. But for right now, the big kicker for me, the main point of this video, which is why I kind of led you on this whole path of what's going on in the ride sharing world and self-driving car world, is people are preferring a Waymo even though it's more expensive for numerous reasons. Now, you could argue a couple different things. One, because these are major cities, I will say this, and I say a lot of these are tech-forward cities, LA, Phoenix, San Fran, etc. People might say, hey, I have a lot of money. There's a lot of money in LA, a lot of money in San Francisco. So let's say if a Waymo is $5 or $10 more expensive, nothing to a lot of these people. But even still, there are people that I know that maybe are not balling, but they're still willing to spend $5 or $10 more for that Waymo just because they want that privacy, just because they want to be able to get in and not have to maybe have a human interaction, whatever the case is. And so I think that's the biggest thing, that as we approach 2026, with the rapid expansion of Waymo going into every single city and the rapid expansion of self-driving cars as companies like Zoox now are getting involved. Tesla is looking to get involved. There's some talk about that. As all these companies go to get involved, the bigger all these companies get, of course, the more rides that happen with self-driving cars. And so the two big things that are really, I'm going to say three, that are really affecting human drivers and will affect human drivers a lot in 2026 regarding self-driving cars is, one, people prefer them, even though they're more expensive. Two, they're expanding rapidly. The self-driving cars are going everywhere. And three, more and more companies are getting involved. More and more companies are getting involved. And with all this going on, it equals one thing, one fundamental issue. With all these issues I'm talking about, when it comes to, okay, with all that being said, how does it really affect the Uber driver and Lyft driver? Less rides to go around. That's what it comes down to. With everything I've said, with all these kind of issues, again, for better or for worse, some people love Waymo, and to them, it's a very utopian thing. Yes, I get to take a Waymo and it's cheaper and I have it to myself. Or it might not be cheaper, but at least I have it to myself. Other people, like human Uber and Lyft drivers, look at it as dystopian, where they're like, whoa, dude, like these robots are taking my jobs. And there are a lot of controversies right now. There are some people who say, hey, I don't drive for Lyft and Uber, but I still only take Uber or Lyft because I don't want to support robots. I want to support humans. And I think a lot of people probably do have that perspective too. But the biggest thing is that there's not that many rides to go around. And I just did a video about the 5 ways that things are getting worse for drivers. 5 ways that things are getting worse for Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. And one of those main points, and I've talked about this since 2023, is too many cooks in the kitchen. Ignoring self-driving cars. There's too many drivers on the road. There's a finite amount of rides to go around. And as a result, because there's too many drivers on the road, it's harder and harder now to get a ride. There is this paradox, though, I will talk about. Not the peak hour paradox, which I've talked about in some videos, where it's kind of this irony now where if you drive on a Friday night, for example, it might be harder for you to get a ride when you should be able to get a ride easy because it's Friday night because so many drivers on the road. But it is this. I'm going to call this like the big city paradox, if I'd call it like that. The best way to make a lot of money with Uber and Lyft, the place where the most rides exist, the highest surges, where you can make the most, the biggest bucks, the most bang for your buck, is major cities. Boston, Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, Austin, Phoenix, San Fran, LA, etc. Here's where the irony now, this paradox is starting to form, which you can probably already predict what I'm about to say, and that is this. The irony now is before, the bigger the city, the more rides to go around, the higher the surges, the more money you're going to make. But Waymo is penetrating all these major cities. Granted, I still think right now, at the time of this video, it's not a massive issue, but it's becoming one. And in 2026, it may be this odd paradox where actually, if you, let's say, live in LA, you live in Los Angeles, in 2026, it actually might make you less money driving in LA because, one, there's too many drivers on the road. That's been an issue for the past 2, maybe even 3 years. But 2, Waymo's taking over like crazy. And the radius of Waymo's is spreading more and more. I remember when it first started, it was like this small little smudge of like Hollywood / like Santa Monica. Now it's including Playa del Rey. And then it's also including all the way up to like Silver Lake. I could take a Waymo from like the tip of Playa del Rey all the way to the tip of Silver Lake. It's also soon going to include El Segundo because they're doing testing. Maybe even Manhattan Beach and Hermosa. So it's spreading like crazy. And it might kind of cause this odd issue now for drivers where it's like, wait a minute. If I drive in a major city, Waymo's everywhere. Too many cooks in the kitchen, not just human drivers, but self-driving cars. Because there's too many cooks in the kitchen, there's not enough rides to go around. I don't make that much money. But then if I go to, let's say, a smaller city, it's a smaller city. So there's less rides to go around because it's a smaller city. Where do I go? I don't know. And that is an issue I'm going to see becoming a huge thing where you're like, okay, if you're a rideshare driver, like say in San Fran, the hub of ride sharing in the world, Waymos are everywhere, especially because it's so tech forward. And so I can see it actually in 2026 being one of the worst places to drive. I don't know. I'm just predicting, but it might become one because a lot of drivers are saying, dang, there's too many Waymos to go around. One. Two, Waymos are getting cheaper. Three, though, even if they're not that cheap, people still prefer it. And there's not that many more rides for me. I have to drive somewhere else. Now, does that mean, to use like an interesting example, if you live in Los Angeles, does that mean you should drive to San Diego, where Waymo does not exist yet, and drive in San Diego, where it's a smaller city, but maybe more rides to go around? I don't know. San Diego did get rated, by the way, as a side note, if you live in Southern California, San Diego did get rated one of the best cities to drive for, Uber and Lyft in the country, actually. You get the benefits of California, and there's protections for drivers now. Now we just got unions greenlit. So there's a lot of advantages to driving in San Diego. And maybe you are better off driving to San Diego, making that 2 to 3 hour drive, driving for an entire weekend and coming back. Maybe you will make more money because there's no Waymos there. Now, granted, this is something that I think will be more of a 2026 issue, and maybe even later in 2026, but it is going to be an issue. And again, I hate making negative videos like this. I hate making pessimistic, dark, Black Mirror, negative future projection type videos, but I also have to be truthful. And the truth is, Waymo's not slowing down. It's speeding up. And that is one harsh, inevitable truth.